Hello, everybody. All right. Seeing as we do have three people here now, I guess I will go ahead and just a friendly reminder to everybody, of course, if you haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we can get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the question to the best of my ability. Hey, Netsuri. I see you there. Thank you for popping in. All right. Anyways, so let's talk about what's on tap for tonight. Normally, I wait for people to come in. Since we do have at least one other person in here, I'll go ahead and just get right into what we're going to talk about. So, I got one article I'm going to go over from Bleeding Fool, comics related article talking about this year's Eisner's awards. Apparently, they're favoring the woke agenda over a broader fan base. We'll take a deeper look at that. We'll have the number one fan of this show. Well, I hope you are. Nice for you to say that, my friend. Anyways, so aside from the one article we just talked about, we're gonna also have the wrestling wrap up. Look back at this past Friday night SmackDown, and the Saturday's Collision. Look ahead to tonight's Monday Night Raw, as well as look ahead to this upcoming weekend SummerSlam, and get caught up on all the latest in the world of wrestling news as well. And then we'll wrap things up with this day in each history. So, with that all being said, why don't we go ahead and get started? Get right into the stories here. A friendly reminder, of course, if you haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we get to more friendly people to engage. It'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So, with all that being said, let's get right into this. All right, so here we go. 2025 Eisner Awards again favored woke agenda over the broader fan base. Article by Chris Braley published earlier today. So let's see. Will Eisner Comic Industry Award. Now, for those of you that name doesn't sound familiar, Will Eisner was a famous comic book writer back at the very beginning, back in the golden age of comics, back at the very beginning, was one of the first pioneers of the industry, and therefore a lot to be attributed to, contributed to a number of the early stories and all that. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and get into this article then. The annual Eisner Awards, held each year at San Diego Comic-Con, are known as the comics industry's top honors. The original mission was to provide ongoing recognition of outstanding comics work and promote artistic quality and innovation within the medium. However, much like the Oscars or the Emmys, they've increasingly shown a clear preference for quote-unquote woke and left-leaning creators and subject matter, ignoring a lot of great work that doesn't align with their progressive ideologies. The 37th annual Will Eisner Comic Industry Awards ceremony was held Friday night, July 25th, at the Hilton San Diego Bayfront Hotel, and this year's winners and nominees were yet another demonstration of the growing political bias which has seemingly taken over the organization. But of course, we've been seeing this the last 4 or 5 years, how it's become more ideological and more more political, which is why you've had like movements like Comicsgate and independent comics start to flourish more because people are just not wanting to buy the mainstream stuff anymore because of all this. But anyways, as we continue on here, for example, War on Gaza by Joe Sacco won Best Single Issue One Shot. If this title isn't a strong enough indicator, the book presents a strongly anti-Israel view, portraying the conflict as genocide. Another nominee in this category that didn't win was Abortion Pill Zine, or Abortion Pill Zine, I guess, by Isabella Rotman, Marnie Galloway, and Sage Coffey, which openly promotes a pro-choice agenda. These selections are indicative of how the Eisners regularly prioritize political messaging over artistic quality or entertainment. It's disappointing to see an award with such prestige shift focus from diverse stories to political correctness. This marks a concerning direction where political alignment overshadows creativity and storytelling, which should never happen in entertainment. You know, which should never happen in entertainment. Unfortunately, it's becoming more and more the norm in the mainstream now, unfortunately. Now, this only scratches the surface. Formerly known as the Will Eisner Comic Industry Awards, the Eisner Awards were established in 1988 to recognize creative achievement in American comic books. Named after pioneering comic creator Will Eisner, the grandfather of the modern graphic novel, the awards have become regarded as the industry's most prestigious honors. The original aim of the awards was to highlight excellence in comics and their creators, with nominees selected by a panel of judges from various parts of the comic industry and winners voted on by comic book professionals. They've certainly shifted their priorities over the years. Let's see now. See if anybody say anything, huh? Let's see. Politics should never be involved in entertainment. Entertainment is a form of fantasy to escape reality. You're right, and there are a lot of people who would agree with you on that one, Netsuri. Oh wait, I'm sorry, Natsumi. I keep, because I keep seeing see that M as an R, so my bad. But anyways, Natsumi. Let's see. This year, the judges' pick for best short story went to Spaces by Phil Jimenez, featured in DC Comics' annual gay-themed comic book DC Pride. It's an autobiographical tale about his experiences as a gay man, mixed with fantasy elements linked to Wonder Woman. While it may have been personal and heartfelt, the selection further highlights the Eisner judges' pattern of favoring progressive personal narratives and promoting social agendas far more than artistic excellence. I'm only surprised DC Pride, or Marvel's alternative voices, didn't get even more attention this year, especially when so many of the selections were centered on politics. And I guess this is some scenes from Spaces, I guess. Let's see. Feeding Ghost, a graphic memoir by Tessa Hulse, won the Best Graphic Memoir award. This graphic novel was centered around trauma, gender, race, mental health, and immigration, quote, through the lens of social justice, quote unquote. Um, the writer is known for taking part in the radically left wing Seattle CHOP protest. Um, CHOP. Um, so her radical left bona fides are well established. The book combines personal and political history, emphasizing intersectionality and critique of colonialism, gender, and race. The Eisner's elevation of works like this actually raises more concerns that social messaging has become far. Well, I think that's supposed to be I think it's supposed to be far more than supposed to be two words, not one. So an editorial error there, but far more important to the organization than comic storytelling or artistry. Let's see now. Let's see now. This year's best publication for teens was awarded to Lunar New Year Love Story by Jean Long Yang and Leong Pham. The story is about Valentina, a Vietnamese American teen dealing with romance and family secrets. While not explicitly about LGBTQ themes, the book does include a prominent same sex couple, subtly normalizing LGBTQ identities. It also promotes acceptance of cultural fluidity and multiple identities. Again, while the LGBTQ elements are not explicit in the main plot, this inclusion underscores the growing preference at the Eisners for quote unquote woke content. Tara Booth's Processing 100 Comics That Got Me Through It won Best Humor publication. The book is autobiographical and focuses largely on gender and sexuality. Booth emphasizes representing women's and non binary experiences and challenges male dominated erotic art. The comics discuss sexuality, consent, pleasure, and empowerment in a way meant to normalize complex feelings about gender. This kind of quote unquote socially aware comic with questionable art skills on display, see below, certainly fits the Eisner's current trend. I wonder if Will Eisner's got to be turning over in his grave right now if he's hearing about this. How, you know, I mean, I think we do know that. Like, I know that Stan Lee passed away a few years ago. From what I understand, I don't think he was deep down too thrilled at like where comics had gone, the direction comics had gone, and we know a lot of the older comic creators, you know, the longtime comic creators, like guys like Chuck Dixon, Mike Barron, you know, um, Gabe Eltabe, you know, and even on Skyver, a lot of these guys, you know, didn't necessarily, you know, care for a lot of what we've been seeing, you know, what we've been seeing from the mainstream media, you know, mainstream sources. Um, anyway, let me see if I can. I've already. Let's see if I can. Yeah, haven't actually. Alright, so anyways. Alright, so let's see now. So I guess this is the artwork and from the book that they were just talking about. The what's that title? Terabu's Processing 100 Comics that got me through it. So this is the yeah. Yeah, the eh, now art wise that looks more like a child did that. I'm sorry. From an artwork perspective, that looks kind of like a child did that. I'm sorry, but truth be told, truth be told, there. The Eisners also honored The Jellyfish by Bourne with Best U.S. Edition of International Material. Focuses on disability and personal growth through a queer protagonist. It is loaded with LGBTQ themes while also exploring healthcare and disability rights. Politically, it aligns with progressive social justice issues, but is not an overt political polemic. However, it fits comfortably within the quote unquote woke sphere that's all too common among recent Eisner winners. Drawing in parentheses here in the feminine, edited by Margaret C. Finn, won Best Academic Scholarly Work. This academic book takes a feminist and intersectional approach to the history of French comics, advocating for recognition of women and gender diverse creators. A worthy topic, but again, it is openly political and perfectly aligns with progressive cultural discourse. The Eisner's choice for Best Digital Comic was My Journey to Her by um, Yuna Hirasawa. This manga is all about the author's experience as a transgender woman, including his struggles with dysphoria and later his gender affirming surgery from biological male to transgender woman in Thailand. It's all about transgender themes and the legal and medical challenges transgender people deal with in Japan. All by itself, this type of explicitly political content being selected over traditional comics shows how much Eisner Awards have changed. Hmm. Tell Me a Story Where the Bad Girl Wins by Caitlin McGurk took Best Comics Related Book. The book profiles Barbara uh, Shermund, an early 20th century cartoonist known for portraying independent women who challenge gender norms. McGurk herself is a feminist comics scholar who highlights Sherman's role as a pioneering female artist. The selection, while neither surprising nor out of bounds, points to the judge's preference for works with feminist themes. The overlooked selections in this category highlight this even further. For Best Publication for Kids, the winner was Plain Jane and the Mermaid by Vera Brosgol. The story critiques beauty standards and gender expectations through fairy tale elements. that subtly engages with body positivity and feminism with a child-friendly framework. While not a uh, didactic, the work's underlying messages reflect the ideological bent now commonly celebrated by the Eisners, even in children's comics. Is a book focused on feminism and body positive really the quote unquote best publication for kids? Best of the year? Really? I would say absolutely not. I would say absolutely not. And I say that not necessarily because of anything in regards to the material in a okay. As I've always said, kids don't need to be targeted for anything regarding sexual. Okay, outside of what their body parts are and what their primary purpose for their particular needs is. I've said that time and again. So any book that takes those elements beyond that, beyond telling a kid that boys have a penis and girls have a vagina, even that for a kid is not really appropriate for appropriate reading material. Okay? In my opinion. Kids should be allowed to be kids. They don't need to be, you know, they don't need to be, they don't need to being put in a situation where they have to put a lot of focus on sexuality. Okay, kids just need to be kids, period. Perhaps the most notable award was for Best Continuing Series, went to Santo Sisters, a comic centered on queer Latina characters and focused heavily on LGBTQ topics. While diversity still seems to be important to some people, the Eisner's preference for political themes over consistent storytelling or artistic quality is very clear with this selection. Santo Sisters only published 2 issues in 2024. Yet, won over established ongoing series with strong track records like Detective Comics, Fantastic Four, Ultimate Spider-Man, and Wonder Woman, which were all nominated as well. Each of these mainstream titles have regular schedules and very large audiences. So choosing an indie comic with limited recent output for a major category like this underscores just how much the Eisners value cultural messaging around LGBTQ and woke themes over popularity, merit, and achievement. Here's a trio of panels that might better illustrate why it was chosen. Prepare to eat your own assholes, Santo Sisters. Really, that's cute. Yeah, that's something to really be. Oh God. Yeah, that is kind of out there. All right, so it's kind of funny because for those of you who have caught the Sunday shows quite a bit, my Sunday shows where I eat with with the co-host where I go over like the older comics. You know, even the older. I mean, we just went over one yesterday. If you guys saw that show yesterday, we went over OK Comics #1 from Worth Carnahan, aka Harvey, or even Rick had commented on like, and albeit it was pretty subtle, but they even went a little graphic there, but not like what we're seeing in today's world, where going graphic back in those days was actually watching a crocodile actually take a bite out of a woman's hand and seeing her hand bleed from it. So that was, but in today's mainstream comics, well, they're saying a lot of these titles are actually independent. So, but the Eisners as a whole, as Chris Braley keeps pointing out here, seems to be focusing more and more on politics and political ideology and all that. But anyways, continuing on here. In the superhero categories, the only ones that did receive awards were female-led titles. DC's Absolute Wonder Woman won Best New Series, and Zatanna, Bring Down the House, took Best Limited Series, written by Kelly Thompson and Mariko Tamaki, respectively. This unusual outcome, again, aligns with the award's current focus on progressive themes, particularly from the perspective of feminists. Yeah, that I was just, it's kind of funny. I was just about to mention that too. I noticed that too. A lot of these awards are going to, they're going to pro feminist and pro LGBTQ titles. Almost like the current judge panels of these of the Eisner Awards seem to be a bunch of groomers, I'd say. The Eisner Awards were meant to honor the best in comics, but their nominee selection process in recent years reflect, I guess they put the word process in again, reflects the same narrow focus as their final winners. The 6 judges chosen by the Comic-Con International Committee decide which book, so there are 6 judges here, decide which books and creators make the ballot in more than 30 categories. After these selections, only industry professionals vote, with the results announced each summer at San Diego Comic-Con. With that kind of ecosystem, it's easy to see how the ideological preferences of a fairly small select group end up shaping the outcome more than to the taste of the broader comic book audience. It also appears that this year's Eisners prioritize, quote, non-white, non-cisgendered, and non-heteronormative, unquote, creators with LGBTQIA plus and progressive themes, once again taking center stage. Unfortunately, this has actually been a trend with these awards for a while. Meanwhile, the core comic book audience, which is still mostly straight men who just want to be entertained, gets overlooked. Not a single male superhero book won this year, despite being the industry's most consistent sellers. How does that happen in over 30 categories? Perhaps because Eisners hand the decision-making to a group that's usually far more focused on their status within progressive circles and on what the majority of comic fans actually want to read, which is why they're going to start losing money. you know, if you're only going to cater to comic book professionals and to, as they said, a fairly small minority there, you know, you're going to eventually people are going to turn. People are going to, I don't know. I don't know if the Eisner Award makes any money or anything like that. You probably do through ticket sales, but there, at the end of the day, the only people going to show up are going to probably be the industry professionals who are voting for it, because most of the fans, I think the fans are going to stop wanting to go to it if all they're going to see is this stuff they don't want to see in comics. So anyways, as we continue on here, while supporters of the Eisners will most likely dismiss this blog post as quote unquote out of touch, it would be very short sighted to ignore the broader realities facing the comic industry today. The fallout from the Diamond Comic Distributors bankruptcy, a cornerstone of the business for decades, combined with the continuing declines in comic sales, points to a shrinking audience struggling under economic pressures. In this environment, the Eisners' recent focus on politics, ideological messaging, and woke themes, like what I've highlighted above, rather than quality entertainment and artistic merit, risk further alienating core readers who have traditionally sustained the industry. Basically, if people are going to stop buying your product and buy what they want, as I said, the thing about the Eisner Awards themselves is it might get to the point where most fans will start, most of the fan base will probably stop going to them if, will stop purchasing the tickets to go to them. Because they're not getting what they want from them. So, amid all the controversy and shifting priorities at the Eisners, this year's ceremony also marked the end of an era. Longtime administrator Jackie Estrada announced her retirement after 35 years at the helm. I'm guessing that's who this lady was up here. I guess that's Jackie Estrada right there. So even as followers, fans, and critics debate the direction and relevance of the awards, no one can deny Estrada's steady hand was crucial in steering them to national prominence. Her behind-the-scenes work, ensuring the show runs smoothly, maintaining fairness, and upholding tradition, left a mark even I have to acknowledge. Estrada's leadership, spanning from the days when comics were a niche interest at Comic-Con to their current pop culture dominance, underscores how much dedication and passion is still possible in the industry, even as a new chapter begins. Whoever steps in next will face enormous expectations. Jackie Estrada's legacy will be a hard act to follow. And again, if you guys haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we can get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best. Hey, if it shows up, thanks for popping in, my friend. Hey, everybody. Hopefully, the next administrator will manage to guide the Eisner Awards back to being a celebration of the comic industry's broadest achievements. and less of this echo chamber of accolades, where a closed circle of insiders continually rewards their favored themes and left-wing perspectives until the award break can free from this cycle. Till the okay, I think again another editorial error there. So I think it's supposed to read until the awards can break free from this cycle and return to reflecting the majority of comic readership rather than the minority viewpoint. Their relevance beyond the industry's tight-knit progressive community will only continue to shrink, which is true. Propping up lectures and elevating political virtue signaling will do nothing to revive comic sales or grow readership. This industry's survival and future vitality will depend on balancing cultural concerns with broader appeal, quality art, and storytelling, celebrating great entertainment and a keen awareness of marketplace realities beyond the ideological echo chambers where these decisions are made. See the full list of this year's award winners. Visit comiccon.org, awards, Eisner Awards. So there we go. So there we go with that one. For those of you who came in late, of course, I do keep my shows up, so you can always go back and watch portions that you missed. But with that being said, that's the one main article. That's the only article we're gonna do for tonight. So now we're gonna move on to the wrestling wrap up. I'm gonna go back over, of course, the weekend's events as well as look ahead to tonight, and also look ahead to this upcoming weekend's. Look ahead to this upcoming weekend's. To this upcoming weekend's SummerSlam. So first off, let's take a look back to Friday Night SmackDown, as it were. As this past Friday Night SmackDown was, of course, as everybody knows, this past Friday night, they did as part of the show a tribute to Hulk Hogan, which some fans, just simply sought to, bury the show on cagematch.com. But the matches themselves were actually pretty, decent to good. Just people were just boo-booing them so on this last part, as I said, there was the tribute to Hulk Hogan that opened the show, following his passing the day earlier. So the show after the opening tribute, of course, the first match saw Roxanne Perez defeat Alexa Bliss in a one-on-one match. Of course, Roxanne Perez had Raquel Rodriguez in her corner. Alexa Bliss had Charlotte Flair in hers. Seeing, Roxanne Perez getting some help from the rope in the pin attempt, as they continue to build towards this weekend's upcoming tag team title match, and we'll talk more about that soon. Then you saw Jade Cargill defeat Chelsea Green in a one-on-one match. After the match, of course, the Chelsea Green's secret Herverse of Alba Fire and Piper Niven attacked Jade Cargill, only for Jade's upcoming opponent at SummerSlam, Tiffany Stratton, to make the save. Now, some people are arguing that part of the reason that maybe some of the reason that some of these matches may have got a little hampered was because they weren't given a whole lot of time, possibly because of the Hogan tribute. But with the time they were given, they were still pretty good matches. Anyways, continuing on, of course. Then Jacob Fatu defeated The Miz, which then saw Solo Sikoa and his MFT, or My Family Tree as he calls them, attacking him after the match. Then the main event and a match for the WE Tag Team titles. Andrade and Rey Fenix defeated the Wyatt Six duo of Joe Gacy and Dexter Lumis by disqualification when the rest of the tag teams came out to interfere in the match, when you had all the tag teams from DIY, Motor City Machine Guns, Fraxium, and the Street Profits all come out to interfere with basically Nick Aldis, the runner of SmackDown. I don't remember off the top of my head what they call them now, but or the commissioner of SmackDown, whatever. He basically had enough and just put all six of these teams into a six-pack challenge. And we'll go over all this. So announced after that match was the six-pack challenge for the six-pack challenge ladder match, and we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. So with that being said, of course, now moving on to Saturday night and moving on to Saturday night and moving on to, of course, all right, moving on to Collision. On Saturday night's Collision, which, by the way, I should probably, my bad, I forgot to tell everybody where SmackDown was taking place from. And it was, of course, on the USA Network. Let me get that down. So Friday Night SmackDown took place from the Rocket Arena in Cleveland, Ohio, on the USA Network, with Wade Barrett and Joe Testatori on commentary. So now, with that being said, let me go back, of course, to what we were doing before here. Now, Saturday Night's Collision was live from the Byline Bank Aragon Ballroom in Chicago, Illinois, with, of course, Tony Schiavone and Nigel McGuinness on commentary, and, of course, Don Callis would provide some occasional. The opening match was the TNT title match, in which Dustin Rhodes had defended the title had successfully defended the title against Ring of Honor Pure Champion Lee Moriarty, with Shane Taylor in his corner. After the match, it led to a confrontation in which Don Callis and Kyle Fletcher came out to confront Dustin, and Kyle Fletcher once again complaining and demanding a one-on-one match with Dustin for the TNT title. Dustin granted it to him, but it will be a Chicago street fight set for this Thursday's special edition of Collision. Then in the Eliminator tournament for the AEW World Tag Team titles, the Bang Bang Gang of Austin Gunn and Juice Robinson defeated Big Bill and Brian Keith to advance in the tournament to next face off against FTR, which I believe will be happening on this coming week's Dynamite. Then Anthony Bowens came out to answer another one of Max Caster's 5-minute challenges. He defeated him in just over 2 minutes, but it did lead to some more friction between Anthony Bowens and Billy Gunn, as Bowens, who had been frustrated of late, decided to attack Caster, only for Billy Gunn to basically pull him off of him and throw him aside, leading to further friction there. In an 8-man tag for $400,000, the conglomeration duo of Hologram and Tomohiro Ishii. Tomohiro Ishii is the current New Japan Strong Openweight champion, and the Outrunners, Turbo Floyd and Truth Magnum, defeated Don Callis family members of Lance Archer and Hechicero, the inventory of Carly Bravo and Sean Dean, with, of course, Shane Taylor and Trish Adora in their corner. And then in a six-woman tag match, you had the debuting Triangle of Madness, a trio comprised of Sky Blue, Julia Hart, and Tekla, defeating Rachel Ellering, Laney Luck, and Maserati. The matriarchy of Kip Sabian and Nick Wayne, with Mother Wayne in their corner. Nick Wayne, the Ring of Honor World Television, defeated Angelico and AR Fox. And the main event saw Athena successfully retain her women's world title against Alex Windsor. After the match, of course, Athena and Billy Starks tried to beat up on Alex Windsor, only for Toni Storm to make the save, as right now they're building up for a potential match between Toni Storm and Athena, as Athena had won the women's gauntlet to become the number one contender, get a contract that she can use at any time to challenge for the AEW World Women's title. Now looking ahead, of course, to tonight's WWE event, as soon as we find that. Tonight's Monday Night Raw. So tonight's Raw will, of course, be the Go Home Raw before this weekend's SummerSlam. Tonight's Monday Night Raw comes to us from the Little Caesars Arena in Detroit, Michigan. Will be on Netflix. The Judgment Day of Finn Balor and JD McDonough will be defending the WWE World Tag Team titles against the LWO duo of Cruz Del Toro and Joaquin Wilde. Jey Uso takes on Bronson Reed. Originally, this match was supposed to be part of SummerSlam. They were even talking about the possibility of it happening in a tag match, but an 8-woman tag team match in a WWE Women's World Champion Naomi And the Green Regime of Alba Fire, Chelsea Green, and Piper Niven will be taking on Nikki Bella, Rhea Ripley, Io Sky, and Stephanie Vector. So there we go with that. Let's see now. So now, one of the other things we're going to look at too, kind of talk briefly about what's happening this. So this weekend, 2-night event from East Rutherford, New Jersey. On Saturday, from the MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey. Already the main event for Saturday's so Saturday you'll see opening them. Okay, so the main event we'll see Gunther defending the WWE World Heavyweight title against CM Punk. Tiffany Stratton defends the WWE Women's title against Jade Cargill. It's all happening on Saturday, of course. In probably the first WWE Tag Team title match that's been signed in quite some time on a pay-per-view. In a 6-pack tables, ladders, and chairs match. So it wasn't just ladders match, it was a TLC match, tables, ladders, and chairs. The Wyatt Six of Joe Gacy and Dexter Lumis will be defending against the teams of Andrade and Ray Phoenix. The Motor City Machine Guns of Chris Sabin and Alex Shelley. DIY of Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano. The Street Profits of Angelo Dawkins and Montez Ford. And Fraxium of Axiom and Nathan Frazier. Another tag match that is at least scheduled, but there's been some news coming out recently here on this. Drew McIntyre, now it's scheduled, it's supposed to be Drew McIntyre and Logan Paul being taken on Jelly Roll and Randy Orton. Now, here's the thing, though. It's been reported that Drew McIntyre is stuck in England right now as he went over to attend a friend's wedding, but for whatever reason, he's not being allowed back in the U.S. Apparently, they're not accepting his British passport for some reason, even though he does have residency here in the United States. He does have legal residency standards here in the United States. So I guess that'll be a story that we'll just have to wait and see on. In a match for the WWE Women's Tag Team titles, the Judgment Days, Roxanne Perez and Raquel Rodriguez are defending against Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair. And then in another tag team match to open up the show, Roman Reigns and Jey Uso will be taking on Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed. Now, originally, this was supposed to be 2 separate matches, but they decided to make it a tag match instead. Now, that's for night 1 of SummerSlam. That's for Saturday. And then the following night, on Sunday, August the 3rd, Sunday, August 3rd, main event will see John Cena defend the undisputed WWE title in a street fight against Cody Rhodes. In a triple threat match for the WWE Women's World title, Naomi defends against former champions Io Sky and Rhea Ripley. In a steel cage match for the WWE United States title, Solo Sikoa defends against Jacob Fatu. In a no countout, no disqualification match for the Women's Intercontinental title, Becky Lynch defends against Lyra Valkyria. If Lyra cannot defeat Becky Lynch for the title, she will lose the right to challenge again while Becky Lynch is still champion. And then just signed last week, Dominic Mysterio will be defending the Intercontinental title against AJ Styles. In some other wrestling news, hey Rex, thanks for popping in. Say hi to Mike and leave a like. Thank you for that, Rex. Nice alliteration there. Thank you for popping in, my friend. But with that, one more piece of wrestling news of interest. So current AEW star Maxwell Jacob Freeman MJF apparently he's got a bit more of the acting bug in him. He's been in some movies recently, of course, including the Iron Claw movie. Um, and now there's some talk at 26 years of age, he may be considering leaving wrestling behind to focus more on an acting career. Now, of course, we've seen a number of wrestlers do this. You know, the late great Hulk Hogan, the late great Roddy Piper, Jesse Ventura, um, The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin's done it a little bit. Most recently, of course, John Cena and Batista. Now it looks like MJF may be looking to get more involved in that. He might be taking more time off from wrestling. The idea of balancing a pro wrestling career and an acting career like that can be a little bit tricky, as many of the names I mentioned probably can tell you. So that's all we got for the wrestling wrap up. So now, so we'll, of course, tomorrow night we'll go back and look back to last night, to tonight's Raw, as well as look ahead to tomorrow night's NXT. But with that, with today being, of course, Monday, July the 28th, 2025, let's go ahead and let's get ready to take a look back at this day in Nietzsche history. History! So, let's see now. 1955, 1935, and 1985, and of course 2010. All right, so first off, we're going to head back. We are going to head back 90 years ago on this date, 90 years ago today. Charles Mintz Productions' Scrappy's Big Moment premiered in movie theaters on this date back in the Charles Mintz Productions short Scrappy's Big Moment premiered in movie theaters on this date back in 1935, 90 years ago today. The animation is fluid and cartoonish as Scrappy and Oopie train for and fight against a well-drawn Max Bear, a leading and feared boxer of the day who killed at least one man in the ring. So, 35 years ago, 90 years ago today, back in 1935, Scrappy's Big Moment premiered in movie theaters, distributed by Columbia Pictures. I thought you meant Scooby-Doo Scrappy. No, long before Scooby-Doo Scrappy, long before Scooby-Doo Scrappy, there was a cartoon character named Scrappy who was created by Charles Mintz. Charles Mintz was a cartoonist who, of course, would basically produce a lot of the works that were distributed by Columbia in the 30s. He also, of course, did Crazy Cat there in the 30s, and of course did a number of the Color Rhapsody shorts as well. So, but anyways. With that, and I will now move on to the next piece in each history. So the next thing being, we move ahead to the year 1955, 70 years ago today. So on this date, 70 years ago today, On this date, 70 years ago today, back in 1955 here, Pepper Gomez and Rito Romero defeated Hardball Haggerty and Stu Gibson for the NWA Texas Tag Team titles in Galveston, Texas. So on this date, 70 years ago, Pepper Gomez and Rito Romero defeated Stu Gibson and Hardball Haggerty for the NWA Texas Tag Team titles in Galveston, Texas, in the NWA's Texas territory. This is kind of the precursor to, of course, the precursor to the big time wrestling and world class wrestling out of Dallas. So with that, getting ready to move on to the next piece of Niche history. We move ahead, of course, to the year 1985, 40 years ago today. On this date, 40 years ago today. On this date, 40 years ago today, back in 1985, Ashi Productions OVA film Magical Princess Minky Momo La Ronde in My Dream was released on this date back in 1985. So 40 years ago today, Ashi Productions OVA film Magical Princess Minky Momo Le Ronde in My Dream was released on its date back in 1985. And finally, moving ahead to the year 2010, which was, of course, 15 years ago today. On this date, 15 years ago today, for the first issue of Artifacts from Image's Top Cow imprint, went on sale on its date back in 2010. Sold for $3.99 with 32 pages. So on this date, back in the year 2010, 15 years ago today, the first issue of Artifact Image's Top Cow imprint went on sale on this date back in 2010. So with that, I thank everybody for being here. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. Of course, we'll be back with more Niche News tomorrow. And of course, this Sunday, I'll be joined by RJ Carter from Critical Blast. We'll be going over comics that went on sale in June 1940. I believe this week we'll be looking at books that went on sale from Ace Magazines. So with that, I thank everybody for being here, and I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. Bye.